Hey there, folks. Austin Baumgarten here with Keller Williams Realty Northwest Montana and Hidden Homes Montana. It is Hidden Home Show Day, and we have an amazing guest, Leanna Troesh, one of my good friends and also an amazing coach and speaker. We're going to give some of the credentials of Miss Leanna here, what she's got going on. Basically, speaker and coach. She is also ICF certified life and parent coach. She has recently gone back to school to study social work and addiction counseling, and she is a prevention specialist supporting community-wide change to smash the stigma surrounding mental illness and substance abuse. Mm-hmm. I know that was long and drawn out, wasn't it? Yes. Anyway, good friend of mine, Leanna, thank you so much for coming. This is going to be awesome. I want to talk about, community is what we're talking about today. I would say it was one of the big things. We obviously on this show talk about real estate as well, but community is a big part of that. And so I want to kind of get a little bit of background about you, like how you landed in Montana. I always kind of throw that out there if you want to throw in like your first job, because that's one of my favorite things to talk about people, because everyone has a different, job as their first one.
Oh my gosh, my first job.
That's what we're going to hear about in a minute. So,
like
anyway,
when I moved here, right?
Exactly. Well, it could be when you moved here, or it could be your first job. Like, did you start working at 14, 15?
Here.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, then let's go. How did you land in Montana? I know you've not necessarily been here your whole life, but.
No, I have been here for January will be 7 years.
Okay.
And I actually came here. I was living for 16 years in Maui, Hawaii. Yeah. My adult life out there. My kids were born and raised there. And we came here on a 10-day family vacation to meet my parents, to visit with them. My sisters were flying up, and we were having a little family reunion up here. And basically, I never went home.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't no great thing. They actually had an intervention. I was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And I came here scared. I didn't know how I was going to be able to hide it from my family anymore. And I didn't hide it.
Nice.
Yeah, and we had a huge intervention on New Year's Eve. A lot of drinking happening, and it was just, it was not really very pretty at all. But when everything kind of settled down, they were like, what's going on? And I said, I need to go to treatment. I don't think they really knew how bad it was. I still don't know if they know how bad it was, but I knew if I went back to Maui, I was most likely going to die or kill somebody, really, from just drinking and driving and recklessness, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And so finally they heard, and I actually ended up going to treatment for 60 days, and then when I was in treatment, they were like, where are you going to go when you get out? And I thought for sure I'd go back to Hawaii, and they were like, you can't go back. You'll die if you go back. There's too many red flags. So my sisters, I grew up in California, and I thought I'd go there, but that wasn't really, I didn't have great support then at that time either. So my parents were here in Montana, and so I chose to come here. And so my kids and I came here. We lived on their property. They set us up with a beautiful like log cabin, which was there's the whole experience. I had 10 days worth of clothes and here I'm like now living in Montana. It was so cold. It was like one of those years when it was like in the teens for weeks and lots of snow, and I was in parkas, and oh my gosh, it was freezing. But it was also so incredibly healing for me and the kids. So, I've been here ever since. And my kids actually just left. So I'm a new empty nester.
Oh my gosh.
So they went and they went west and chased the sunshine. My son actually moved back to Maui.
Okay.
And then my daughter just moved to California to be in a little warmer weather. But
understood.
I'm here. I'm still here.
Wow. Thank you. No, thank you for sharing your story and being vulnerable in that. That's huge. The recovery community around here is amazing. I'm a part of it myself, and that's where we met.
Yeah.
It comes down to, but we'll keep anonymity as much as possible, when it comes down to it. Gosh, I love that you were able to share that. What did, so with the community in general, let's just go into that, because where you and I met, obviously in recovery, but then where we also came to was, you had started a board and that was called Undaunted Family Connections because there was a need in the community for different things. And you and I talked a lot about that beforehand. We ended up being on that board together at one point. But, tell me, I guess, let's link some things together is where I'm kind of going with this, is that let's link together like where your story has brought you to with where your community involvement is today.
Absolutely. Well, it really starts like with my mom. So just growing up, always involved. And so I grew up making food for Thanksgiving. I grew up just being involved in the community. And so that is just something that's been rooted in me. So in Maui, I did a lot of work in the community as well with the kids' schools, putting on the largest community event out there. So it's just a passion of mine and a place where I belong. Which is just giving back and being of service and putting on really big events. Yep. Flashy, big things. And so I love doing those things. And when I got here, one of the questions you had asked earlier was my first job. And that job I got was $10 an hour, sober. So it was the first job I had working for 10, and I was just, stirring linens, like cleaning linens for an event company. And people would ask me, Leah, how are you today? And I just couldn't even form sentences. I couldn't speak. It was just unbelievable for myself, the process of healing that needed to happen in sobriety and just kind of learning how to be a functioning member of society again. So it was very, very humbling beginnings, almost like a new life. It was almost like I felt very childlike, looking outside and seeing the leaves, spring, the seasons. I had never experienced that before, and so just seeing all of that new growth, it was just very humbling beginnings. And so from there, I eventually went back to work in the industry I was working in Maui, which was a cabinet designer.
Okay.
And so that was another job I got. I ended up working for a builder developer for a few years and making really great money. And like all of a sudden, I'm providing for my family and back to it. And I got a huge calling. My dad ended up passing away 2 years after I had lived here, so really grateful I got to spend that time with him. And then I started struggling. My daughter really started struggling when she got into her teenage years, and I think that was somewhere where we were communicating quite a bit, and you were a huge support for me through that. And so I got a huge calling through my experience with my daughter. I had received parent coaching and received a lot of these services that aren't in our local community. And so I just, one morning, was just like, this is what you have to do. And so I wasn't working at that job anymore, and I enrolled back in school. And I started a nonprofit called Undaunted Family Connections, and that's where I think you were one of the first members I went to and asked if you'd sit on this board.
Well, I remember when we were actually at Coffee Traders having coffee, and you had like this notebook, and you had written down, I think you drew like the wolf and all the stuff. Like, this is what the logo is going to look like, and this is the idea. And I was like, that's huge.
Yeah.
Like, that's big. That's a big vision. Which is awesome, because that's where I've always seen you, is that everything's been a big vision, and you go for it. So
yeah. So I mean, needless to say, I did dissolve the nonprofit at the end of last year, but with all the learnings that happened through that whole process, I've just been able to take all of that work and continue doing what I'm doing, and to support other organizations and other services basically out there, and spreading the word and working on more of a bigger platform than what I was doing being an executive director for a nonprofit. I'm still providing the parent coaching and some of the trainings to the community, just not through that nonprofit. And what's kind of funny is I dissolved it at the end of December, which was, again, a very humbling, ego-smashing experience to just come to terms with that. And knowing that it's my purpose, but how can I continue to do this work? And I continue to work as the Flathead Prevention and Recovery Alliance. I'm a facilitator for that alliance locally here. And through some of the work and some of the push that we've been having in this community to provide prevention programs and services, they are now saying that we need a nonprofit to do that.
Yeah.
And it's just funny because that was what that
That's what
nonprofit
you were doing.
was.
Oh, no.
And these organizations, I go, I'm not going to do that again unless we have a board behind it and a solid board of key leaders. And she was like, well, I've got 5 right here. And we do. We would have a pretty strong board, but we're just kind of still feeling out where exactly Flathead wants to go with prevention and what we can do to strengthen our community.
No, that's good. I mean, and that kind of, I mean, I guess this is going to kind of segue into some of the stuff we were talking right before this. And it was just like, are we going to say this on the podcast, right? And that's one of those things too, is like, I mean, there's facts, there's negatives and positives in every community and what we see actually happening. I know you being on the forefront of what's happening with behavioral health, addiction in the Flathead Valley, housing, all those different things. You know a lot more than I do. So, I mean, we're okay here. It's a safe space to be able to talk about not just, I mean, it's not, I mean, this is your educated opinions.
Yeah.
This is like what you've actually been on the, you know, the front lines of it. So kind of, I mean, I guess share what do you think Flathead really needs right now?
Well, what I am working on is community-wide change. So what that looks like is bringing in community events that don't necessarily revolve themselves around alcohol, bringing in community support for our youth so that they know that they belong and what they are doing is important so that they can be contributing members of society. What I do in prevention as a prevention specialist is we take data and we use prevention science to look at the numbers, to actually look at what our greatest needs are as a community. So the assessment that we use is called the Montana Prevention Needs Assessment. It's the PNA. And we pushed in the spring to get this data submitted to all of the schools. And so we were able to get over 1,600 students to take this assessment. And we are waiting for the results. I check the it's going to come out any moment, and it's so important because it's given in the even years, and so 2018, 2020, and through 2022. And so the data that we've been using is from 2018 because in 2020, we didn't have school. Everything shut down and we only had 100 students taking the assessment. And so it's really going to be important because what it's doing is it's identifying our risk factors and our protective factors. And our risk factors, what those look like, are the things that cause us to be more susceptible to falling down the path of addiction or mental illness. And so we look at our students and we look at what their family involvement looks like. We look at what their parents' approval of alcohol in their house is. We look at whether the parents are very involved with social involvement in the community. And so we look at their symptoms of depression. We look at their mental illness as well. And so we're looking at these specific questions based on these risk and protective factors. And so by taking that data, what we can see from 2018 as our greatest needs is our community. So we actually need these events where there's not alcohol being served, and we know that, that our youth can see adults going out into the public and not have a beer garden or not carrying an open container or a beverage, right? And they can see that life can happen and revolve around not having alcohol or substances around you. Other needs are just having some type of community involvement around, like just awards, just acknowledging our youth, acknowledging what they're doing, their great achievements they're doing, and really supporting them in the work that our youth are doing. So those are some of the areas. Some other areas which our greatest needs are our parents' approval. of use. So a lot of the students are reporting that their parents they don't really care if they drink alcohol, or they'd rather have them drink alcohol in their house because they're protected. Mm-hmm. And so just looking at some of that, looking at then some of the policies in which we can implement so that there would be more accountability to parents, that are like social ordinances that would allow for parents to maybe get a ticket or written up if they do host a party. Social host party ordinances is what they're called. And so just looking at implementing some of those things. So as a community, there's so much that we can do as a community, and that's just around substances and mental health, that we can start to implement some of these programs. And then on the side of just our behavioral health needs within the community, is Flathead County is at the highest risk versus any other county in the state. We recently had the Flathead Food Bank the executive director come into one of our alliance meetings and report that their number of behavioral disturbances over at the food bank, when people are just coming in, and the abuse that they're suffering on a regular basis, getting hit upside the head. I mean, people pushing older folks over in walkers. Like, it's so horrible, but there's no one for them to call, and there's nowhere for those people who are disturbing the public to go. And so we really don't have the resources. And when I asked her what that is, like, why are our numbers so much higher than Billings or Missoula or Bozeman? And she said it's really because they don't have the resources. We don't have the resources that those other communities do. So we don't have either the organization who has the funding to provide the resources, aren't providing the resources, or we just don't have the organization to provide the program. So to provide the services, and that's where the nonprofit I started, right, comes in, and that's where possibly starting a nonprofit for prevention to provide those type of programs would be really beneficial to the community.
Wow. That's a lot.
There's a lot of information there.
No, I love it. No, thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a lot. I think the biggest thing that I mean, there's a few things I heard there that were huge. I think the biggest thing I want to talk about was that from 2018 to 2022, those stats for the kids, that's a big one, because we had a pandemic and we still are in the process of a lot of those changes are still residual in 2022. But those numbers are going to be staggering in so many different ways. I can't imagine like the difference between 2018 and 2022 and what they have to say. And you've done some public speaking as well, and I know I've listened to one of your public speaking events, and it was great. I mean, there's some things you talked about. Will you kind of, I guess we talk about it. Talk about it.
Let me tell you about it. No, the data from the post-COVID, right? Post-COVID, it's like what is the new normal? I mean, going back to what it was like pre-COVID, and now we're in post-COVID. But the biggest thing that we can identify, and maybe everybody can identify with, is when the world shut down, what did we all stop doing? We all stopped showering. We stopped getting, dressed, right? Because we could sit in our pajamas. We stopped these things that we did on a regular basis, just getting up, our daily hygiene, going to work, seeing people, all of those things, those are considered protective factors. Okay. And so we were talking about protective factors that assessment identifies those things. And so when the world shut down and we thought it was great for like a week or two where we didn't have to go to work.
Like vacation for a minute.
Oh man, I haven't gotten out of my pajamas in 5 days. But then what happened is we really saw mental illness skyrocket, and we're still seeing residual. You got it. effects of that, right? And so anxiety ended up tripling during COVID from June 2019 to June 2020. Anxiety tripled and depression quadrupled. It went from 6.4% to 24.8%. I mean, that's
Wow.
a huge number. And we're still considering, like, seeing that even as adults. We're seeing, I mean, I have friends who are extroverts, and now they're starting to consider maybe I'm an introvert, because going out into social situations still provides a little bit of anxiety with it, because we were so used to being locked down for so long. And so our kids, I mean, just imagine the skills that they lost with that developmental stages that they were in, from not going out and being around their peers, from not having that experience of those social connections, from not, I remember seeing my son, who was a junior in high school, just really start to decline within that first week. He thought it was great playing video games. And I had to put a full timer on and cut off the internet at a certain time, and to get him on a schedule, because otherwise, I mean, he didn't know day from night. He was just locked up in his room. And I think that happened with so many of our kids. And so really looking at those numbers is going to be really critical for seeing what our greatest need is and how to move forward as a community. And so we do have the Flathead Prevention and Recovery Alliance. We'll see what they end up agreeing to tackle as their top 3 priorities, and what that might look like in our community. But providing some type of community events, providing some evidence-based programs and after-school programs, and in our schools is going to be really important. And then also partnering and collaborating with other organizations like the Nate Shute Foundation, who works on suicide prevention. So we can collaborate with them because some of our greatest needs is depressive symptoms with our students and with our youth. So partnering with them and really collaborating. But some other needs for our community in the Flathead Valley is collaboration. There are silos put up all over the place when it comes to getting anything done. I don't know if you found that in real estate or anything, but in organizations and behavioral health, there are silos, from the schools to the hospital to law enforcement, and just organizations all in between there, because we are so spread out. We have Kalispell's the heart, and then we have Lakeside, and we have Big Fork, we have Columbia Falls, we have Whitefish and Evergreen. They all have their own personalities. And so bringing that all together for the same funding, because as a county, we get the same funding and it needs to be distributed, but also getting them to break down their walls, break down their silos, so that we can come together to know that, like, how, if Big Fork's doing something and bringing that into Kalispell School District, or Columbia Falls has got a great school program over there, and someone leading up some of their parent after school, educational programs. So bringing that into Kalispell and bringing that down to Big Fork and up to Whitefish, but breaking down these silos, because we work better together, right? Rather than in these smaller rural areas that just doesn't have a lot of funding and is only working off of the resources in their smaller community.
I wonder why. I mean, I hear that, and it's because I've been in other communities, like growing up and stuff like that, and it does seem like the community takes care of itself, right? And Flathead is its own community. I love that you're saying that, because it's like they are, but we're so far apart, like geographically, from where you would be, like, let's say you were down in somewhere, I'm going to use California, but like if you're in California and you might have the same amount of people that live in the whole Flathead Valley, but it's in a few square miles. So of course that community is going to bind together. And so I don't know why everyone feels like they need to be their own community, just running their own programs, and this is mine. And I don't know if that's what we're kind of, I feel like we're kind of saying that, or at least I'm saying that, because I have seen it where it's just like, why isn't Big Fork and Lakeside working together,
Mm-hmm.
and then we want to, but does everyone want to? And that's the question. Like you're saying you want to, and a lot of other people I've heard say like, yeah, we want to be as a community, but why do you think that is? Why they're so individual?
The silos are there's some of it is just political differences, right?
Okay.
Just beliefs and values of what they feel is important. Um, and some of it is that kind of stigma around funding, right? And so the competition with
Okay.
funding resources and not wanting to share. And I think some of it is just it was small for so long that it was okay and it worked, right? I mean, just you had to you won't Big Fork only had their resources there, right? But because it's growing, this valley is growing so fast, we can't afford to do that anymore. We can't
Okay.
afford to do that anymore because our kids' lives are at stake. I mean, they really, truly are. If you remember the cluster of suicides, the death by suicides we had last year in the fall. So we can't afford to do that anymore. And the increasing rates of substance abuse that we are finding, the alarming rates that we have in the Flathead Valley as well. So I don't think that anyone can ignore it anymore. And the funding comes into the whole county. Each Kalispell has its own funding, yes, but the Flathead County itself includes all of those areas, and plus some. I mean, it goes all the way out to Hungry Horse. So we can't afford it, and it's not fair to just say Kalispell's going to get the funding, and we're only going to focus on District 5 schools. They all deserve a chance, and they all deserve the funding as well.
Okay. Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense because, the speed of which even technology has gone is like everyone is united. So like maybe, and this is what I look at when I first moved here, like Big Fork and let's say Lakeside and Kalispell and Columbia Falls was all a little bit different. And there was like, let's even say like the rivalry of like, sports, all that stuff that's sitting there. But now it's because of the speed of technology and also the growth we've had in all those communities, the kids, the adults, everyone is connected, even though they might still think that Big Fork is just its own thing, Lakeside is its own thing. It's not. The valley is one gigantic county that needs to be united. And I feel like it's inevitable to get away from. And I know you were just saying that we're growing so fast. Yeah. I know that's kind of deep.
Yeah. I mean, it's some of the biggest work I was doing. There's a program that the governor is supporting. He's supporting prevention specialists to be funded in every county. And so Flathead Valley has money for a prevention specialist, but the position's been vacant since March, unfortunately. And he's also pushing for the Communities That Care initiative, which was a program that I was heading up where I got over 40 key leaders in the entire county. That means every county, every smaller area was represented, from Whitefish to Columbia Falls, Evergreen, and Big Fork and Kalispell. And so they were all represented, and I had all these key leaders come and sit at the table, and we had a discussion about the future and where we're going and where these prevention efforts could lead. And I got 16 signed confirmations and letters to be a part of it. And this was anything from, it hit all 12 sectors, which means it hit banks, it hit law enforcement, it hit our hospital. So just across the board, we had religious entities there. We had after-school programs. We had the school superintendents. We had as many of these organizations come to the table, and everybody was like, we're ready.
Awesome.
Now is the time. So we are ready. And it's just a matter of, there's still some things that get to be cleaned up. Again, we're waiting for the P&A to come out, but while we are Flathead is still, it's kind of in rough waters right now. It's with its behavioral health crisis happening. There's a lot of shakedown with the the prevention, the substance abuse and mental health services. A lot of people are just moving around. There's a lot of ownership changing of hands. So there's just a lot of shakeup happening right now in the Flathead Valley. And it's kind of getting involved as much as possible, especially with the legislative sessions coming up in January with our turnover of the elections, and then with this legislation coming up with, what that's going to really look like for the Flathead Valley, and how we can start implementing some of these policies that could really support our youth and our community to make us a strong, united community.
Well, and it sounds like we're on the way. I mean, I'm really glad that you just said like 40 people came together and you had 16 different letters of it. Was that like a letter of intent, or just saying, hey, we're willing to work on this?
Yeah.
That's huge. And in every community, change, or actually just in every, I don't like change, and I know a lot of people don't like change. That's how I've always looked at it. It's one of the biggest fears, right? What's going to happen next? I don't know. And the unknown. And so there's been so much of that in the past few years as well. We are changing as a community. It's great that people are recognizing that, and it's wonderful that you're a big part of that. And thank you for that. I mean, it's huge. Are you going to go? I think we're talking. You're going to be going to the state legislature talking soon, right?
Yeah, I'm going tomorrow.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, just to start the conversation. So I'm working with, I'll be going to the governor's office, speaking with them over there on what their ideas are on our health policy, talking to our block grant funding for mental health and substance abuse and prevention, talking with the DPHHS, so some departments over there, and speaking with NAMI, which is the National Alliance for Mental Illness, and what their ideas are, and also speaking with our Behavioral Health Alliance of Montana, BAM. So they're based out of Missoula. So speaking to them and looking at what, the future of mental health and this collaborative care. There's a new collaborative care initiative model that the country is working to implement, and Montana is trying to adopt it into their healthcare system. So, and that means that when you go to the medical doctor for physical pains, right? That's generally what we go to the doctors for, is our physical pain. If we had a broken bone, that's what you do. You go to the doctor, you get a cast. But you'll also be able to go to the doctor for mental health and substance abuse. Those will be assessed at the doctor's office.
Okay.
So just looking at and insurance will cover it. So looking at what that comprehensive care model looks like and how that will be implemented, and supporting whatever processes that looks like, so that so people can get the services that they deserve.
Okay. Well, how can the individual, like the person that's watching this podcast, you talked a lot about what, the heads of the counties and stuff are doing like that. What can those people do? Like, how could I help individually?
Yeah, really getting involved. Someone told me when I was in my early 20s, and the mayor of our community, and he, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, what can I do? I asked that exact same question to him, and he said, get involved. And, and it's something that I have done ever since then. And just get involved, look at community events that are happening, show your support by showing up to them. Get involved with the kids' schools, get involved, learn, read what's happening, listen to what the commissioners are doing and where the money is being spent and what's happening with it. But get involved. Like, just start to, what are you passionate about? And start to tap into that a little bit. Start to ask questions. Start to do your own research and really start to educate yourself on it and get involved. I mean, some of the biggest things is vote. We just had our voting session. I mean, in our little community, your vote matters. When maybe, you don't think it matters maybe on the big national scale, but in our small community, your votes matter. So go out there and vote. and educate yourself on the things that matter to you, right? And I think we all can agree that our youth and our kids, right, that they're the most important things to us. We cherish that, and we want to see them grow up in a healthy, safe community. So being involved and getting involved in some of these prevention programs and supporting those causes. There are resources and things that you can do just to volunteer. So so just keep an eye out for when some of these prevention programs and community events start to show up, know that there's a reason for them.
That's a lot of information. Thank you so much for sharing it. I mean, you do a lot. That's what I'm seeing right here, is that you're doing a lot for the community. And like I said, you're kind of like a philanthropic entrepreneur. You know, and that's what I've seen, and I've always been drawn to you. Not, I mean, as a friend, obviously, in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous where we first met, but also just like the all you do for the community. I just don't understand how you can actually support yourself. But you do have a coaching program, right? How will people be able to get your help? Like, what's the best way for the community to help themselves?
Yeah, there's, the 7 streams of income. Thank you very much.
Oh.
Is that Dave Ramsey?
That is Dave Ramsey. Yeah, good one.
So
All right.
I got the 7 streams of income. Yeah, so everything all falls in line with the same passion and purpose, which is, smashing the stigma on mental health and substance abuse. So I have one-on-one clients that I see, and we work on some of those protective factors that I mentioned earlier, right? Those daily habits and what that looks like in your everyday. So setting up a solid morning routine, setting up a nighttime ritual, setting up, whether it's applying mindfulness and meditation to your practice, to your daily practices, or if you're, that goal setting to want to go out and be an entrepreneur on your own, right? So looking at how to apply these things to your everyday life. And those I work one-on-one with clients. So I have a roster actually that I'm filling up for the beginning of the year right now. So we're in, basically I'm working on enrollment. I have open enrollment right now. People can come in and put a deposit down to hold their spot. And we're going to be launching and just taking off at the beginning of the year. And it's great because it's a community. So I work with other coaches as well. And so all of their risers and the coaches, we all get together on weekly or monthly workshops where we hold free monthly workshops with anyone from the public that wants to come in and do some goal setting for their month, what their month looks like, what their month is going to look like. But starting January, it's going to be the year. And we'll kind of set those plans, set those goals, and take off. And it's we do them in cycles, so 3-month cycles.
So how do they find that? Like, I mean,
yeah,
is that
my
website.
Yeah, website. So leannatroesh.com. On my website, they can also go to my Instagram, which is Leanna Troesh.
How do you spell that?
LEANNA_TROESH.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
I know, because I've had many years as you've been a friend, I've had the hardest time saying your last name. I don't know why.
Yeah, Leanna, speaker and Troesh, Leanna Troesh. And then I'm also a speaker. So, if anything that I'm saying here, if you think your organization would benefit from it, I work on going into universities, schools, and educating communities and associations with this information. I also am a consultant, so you can hire me to come in to apply some mental health awareness or substance abuse awareness into your organization. So if you're a business owner and want to know how you can apply more awareness around mental health with your employees, and also to support them in their productivity and efficiency with the work that they're producing. So I've just got my hands in so many different things, and it's pretty awesome.
But I love it. Then you got to support yourself somehow.
To
support yourself with your passion. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, and working with clients to find their own passion. So, yeah, I love working with the older millennials who are still working to find their passion and purpose, and sitting down with them to support them and what that might look like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Leanna, thank you. You've helped me many times in my life just for conversations as friends. And I'm sure her coaching program is amazing. When it comes down to it, we could talk for hours. I mean, this is a big not necessarily just problem. I know you're saying problem, but like something that needs to be addressed in the Flathead, and also just mental health in general. Like I know how big that is, and thank you for helping everyone else out down the road. Once again, folks, this is the Hidden Home Show. It's been great. It's been organic. It's been fun. Austin Baumgarten with Keller Williams Realty Northwest Montana and Hidden Homes Montana. Over and out. Thanks, Leanna. Yeah.